Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take the sources you share with us, the research, the news, the complex technical reports, and distill them into the essential knowledge you need to be perfectly informed.
And today, we are staring down a threat that is, well, it's absolutely real. It's statistically certain.
And yet it sounds like the plot of a summer blockbuster. We're talking about asteroid impact avoidance.
Or, as the global scientific community calls it, planetary defense.
It really is the ultimate insurance policy for civilization, isn't it?
It is. And when you read through the source material, the urgency isn't rooted in some kind of panic. It's just cold probability.
So the risk of a catastrophic impact, say tomorrow, is remarkably low.
Oh, very low. But the sources all confirm that the danger is a near certainty eventually. That is, unless we proactively take some robust defensive measures.
That distinction, low risk now, but 100% certainty later, that's what really demands a deep dive. We're not talking about hyperbole here.
No, not at all. This is about global security planning across generations.
So what's the definitive threat assessment that guides all this planning?
I think we can turn to the B612 Foundation for that. They're a nonprofit dedicated entirely to this mission.
And they put it pretty bluntly.
With chilling clarity, yeah. They said, it's 100% certain we'll be hit by a devastating asteroid, but we're not 100% sure when.
And this isn't theoretical. We have major recent examples that frame the whole challenge.
Exactly. Two of them, really.
Okay, so give us the scale. What does a devastating impact actually look like?
Well, the planet killer, the extinction level event, is all defined by size. 66 million years ago, an object roughly 10 kilometers wide slammed into the Yucatan Peninsula.
And that created the Chicxulub crater.
Right. And it triggered the KPG extinction event, which, ended the reign of the non-avian dinosaurs. That is the maximal threat we're defending against.
But the threat profile is much broader than just those planet killers.
Oh, absolutely. You don't need a 10-kilometer object to cause a global catastrophe in the modern world.
Right.
Think about the 1908 Tunguska event over Siberia. That object was relatively small, estimated to be only 50 to 80 meters across.
And it never even hit the ground.
It never hit the ground. It detonated as an airburst explosion about 6 to 10 kilometers up in the atmosphere. But even so, the blast flattened an estimated 30 million trees across 2,000 square kilometers.
Wow. And if an object that size, 50 to 80 meters, were to impact a densely populated coastal area today,
the regional consequences would be catastrophic. You're talking akin to a massive tsunami or a major nuclear detonation.
it would shut down global trade, infrastructure.
Massive population displacement.
Yeah.
The goal of planetary defense is to mitigate all these threats, not just the KPG level ones.
So the whole defense mission, according to the sources, it boils down to two fundamental approaches.
Purely based on physics, yeah. It's either modifying the object or modifying its path.
So we either try to modify the object itself.
Right. That means breaking it up, fragmentation, hoping the resulting pieces are small enough to burn up in the atmosphere or, miss Earth entirely.
Or we go with what is the overwhelmingly preferred method.
Which is deflection. We just modify the trajectory of the object by changing its velocity just enough so that it misses Earth.
So our mission in this deep dive is to trace the evolution of that defense strategy. We're going to unpack the intense global hunt for these objects, the competing deflection technologies,
From kinetic punches to gravity tractors.
and the often surprising political and diplomatic landmines that have to be navigated when humanity tries to save itself.
It gets complicated fast.
Okay, so before we can even think about moving a single space rock, we have to find it.
You have to find it, track it, and predict its course with extreme precision.
Which brings us to the global hunt. And the standards for what we actually consider a target, they've changed dramatically over the last 25 years.
They really have. The initial mandate from the U.S. government, which drives a huge portion of global detection efforts, it focused only on the true extinction-level threats.
This was back in 1998.
That's right. NASA was directed to find and catalog 90% of near-Earth objects, or NEOs, with diameters of 1 kilometer or larger.
And they wanted that done by 2008.
Exactly. That 1 kilometer size was the benchmark for a guaranteed global civilization-threatening catastrophe.
And the program, known broadly as the Space Guard program, was actually pretty successful at meeting that target.
It was. Most of the massive kilometer-plus objects that cross Earth's orbit have now been found and tracked.
And thankfully, none of them are currently on an impact trajectory.
Right. But the focus quickly widened. because people recognize the devastating regional impact of those smaller objects, like the one from Tunguska.
Which led to the 2005 George E. Brown Jr. Act.
And this act set a new, much more ambitious and ongoing goal, one that we are still struggling to meet today.
So the goal shifted.
It did. It shifted to detecting and cataloging 90% of all NEOs equal to or greater than 140 meters in diameter with a target of 2028.
And why 140 meters? What's the significance of that number?
That's the size threshold believed to be large enough to survive atmospheric entry and cause devastating, massive regional damage. Think on the scale of a multi-megaton blast.
Capable of wiping out an entire metropolitan area or causing coastal tsunamis?
Exactly. So we're shifting from finding planet killers to finding, let's call them regional threats.
And how are we doing on that 2028 deadline?
We are
Yeah.
far behind, unfortunately. As of early 2024, the sources indicate we've only found and cataloged about 34% of the estimated total population of NEOs in that size range.
44%. So that means over half of these significant regional threats.
Roughly 56%, yeah.
Yeah.
They remain completely undiscovered and untracked.
That is the ultimate vulnerability. We're working on deflection technology for objects we haven't even found yet.
That's the race.
So how is the current search effort being executed under the Space Guard umbrella?
The bulk of the heavy lifting is done by ground-based surveys, particularly in the U.S. Southwest. Historically, the Lincoln Near-Earth Asteroid Research Project, or LINEAR, was a powerhouse.
Right, using those two 1-meter telescopes.
And it was so effective that by 2004, it was responsible for finding 65% of all known asteroids.
But the current champion, the most prolific finder, is the Catalina Sky Survey.
CSS, yeah. Operating out of Arizona, they truly optimize for volume and speed. They use a 1.5-meter telescope on Mount Lemmon and a smaller one nearby.
And their whole method is just constantly scanning.
Constantly scanning huge swaths of the sky, identifying those faint little streaks left by moving objects against the background stars.
Yeah.
Their output is just staggering.
And of course, we also have veteran programs like SPACWatch.
Right, Spacewatch, another Arizona-based program. They pioneered a lot of the scanning techniques we use today. These teams are essentially the front line of Earth's defense.
But ground-based telescopes have limitations. Weather, clouds, the atmosphere.
And they often struggle with objects that are optically dark. And that's where space-based observation becomes absolutely crucial.
And that's the role of the NEOWISE mission.
The Near-Earth Object-Wise extension, yeah. NEOWISE surveys the sky using infrared detection.
Which is vital because a lot of these asteroids are made of dark, carbonaceous material. Very hard to spot in visible light.
Exactly. So if they're dark, how does infrared help us find them?
They absorb heat, right?
They absorb solar radiation, and as they travel through space, they re-radiate that energy as heat in the infrared spectrum. So NEOWISE is essentially sensing the heat signature of these objects.
Which gives you a much more accurate estimate of the asteroid's size.
A much better estimate, yeah. Because the brightness in visible light depends on both size and reflectivity. But the infrared heat output depends almost entirely on its size. So this method is incredibly effective at finding those dark threats the other surveys might miss.
And looking ahead, the source material points to the Vera C. Rubin Observatory as the next huge leap in this.
It promises to be a total game changer. It's starting its survey in late 2025, and it'll be able to survey the entire visible sky every few nights with unprecedented resolution.
So that's the technological boost we need to finally start closing that 56% detection gap for the 140-meter class objects.
That's the hope, yes.
So those are the systems for early warning, giving us years or decades to plan. But we need a last resort, a system designed to catch the small, fast-moving threat that is missed.
Or that approaches from the direction of the sun.
Exactly.
That is the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, or ATLS. It's a global network now with telescopes in South Africa and Chile, allowing it to scan the entire dark sky every single night.
And the name says it all, Last Alert.
It does. If ATLS finds an object, we are almost certainly too late for deflection, at least with current technology.
But the data is still critical.
Oh, it's the difference between a total surprise and a localized crisis management scenario. If ATLS confirms an impact, the data allows officials to identify the affected region, calculate the impact time, and, launch evacuations. It's the firewall against a surprise Tunguska.
This whole process of detection, it leads to this fascinating problem that scientists have to manage publicly, what the sources call the probability paradox.
Ah, yes. where the calculated impact chance goes up, sometimes dramatically, before it suddenly drops back down to zero.
So why does gathering more data seem to temporarily increase the likelihood of catastrophe?
It's entirely an effect of measurement uncertainty, what we call the error ellipse. When a new object is first spotted, you only have a few data points on its position and velocity.
So its potential path is a big, fuzzy ellipse of error.
A very large fuzzy ellipse, yes. And often, Earth falls somewhere within that initial ellipse, giving us a low but non-zero probability of impact, maybe 1 in a few thousand.
But as you observe it longer, that ellipse starts to shrink.
Exactly. And as it shrinks, the calculation of where the asteroid must be becomes more constrained. If the shrinking ellipse still includes Earth, well, the planet is now covering a larger relative fraction of that error region, because the region itself has gotten smaller.
So it counterintuitively raises the calculated impact probability.
Temporarily, yes. It's just a scientific intermediate step. It's only when you get enough precise data, often from radar, that the error ellipse shrinks enough to clearly show that Earth is outside the trajectory. Then the probability drops to near zero.
But this creates a huge psychological and political headache for scientists.
Immense. Because if an asteroid is truly on an impact course, that probability will just keep climbing as the error ellipse shrinks right around Earth.
This is the classic boy who cried wolf dilemma.
It is. Scientists have to balance raising an alarm, which eats into vital reaction time, against the risk of a false alarm. You panic the public over a near miss, and then next time you sound the alarm,
Nobody listens.
that erosion of public trust is a huge concern, which is why this process requires stringent international coordination formalized through the UN.
So let's talk about the UN's role in managing these warnings.
Okay, so recognizing that an impact is a global crisis, the UN established 2 key bodies in 2013, the International Asteroid Warning Network, or IAWN.
And the Space Missions Planning Advisory Group, SMPAG.
Right. IAWN is the global clearinghouse for warning information. They're tasked with sharing validated, credible information among nations.
And they have a specific trigger for an official warning?
They do. They must issue a warning if the impact probability is calculated to be greater than 1% within the next 20 years for an object larger than about 10 meters.
And SMPAG handles the response.
Right. SMPAG coordinates joint studies on the technologies needed for deflection and provides oversight for actual response missions. This group is essential because planning a deflection mission involves some really intense diplomacy.
And finally, we have to acknowledge the ultimate detection problem, the long-period comets.
They are the absolute worst-case scenario. They originate from the distant Oort cloud, so they enter the inner solar system at speeds much, much faster than most NEOs. Our warning time is tragically short.
Measured in months, not years.
Exactly. Which makes that IAWN and SMPAG coordination extremely difficult under that kind of emergency pressure.
So we know where they are, and we know we're racing the clock to find that other 56%. Let's talk about the hard part. What do we actually build to push this thing?
Deflection strategies. And the source material is very clear. Deflection is overwhelmingly preferred over fragmentation.
Why is that? It seems like breaking it up would be a good idea.
The preference is rooted in the elegance of orbital mechanics. Earth is large, but its path is predictable.
If we can just alter the asteroid's velocity enough to delay its arrival by a little over 7 minutes.
Just 7 minutes?
Just 7 minutes. Earth will have moved 1 full planetary diameter in its orbit, and the asteroid misses completely. That tiny velocity change applied early enough means we're safe.
And breaking it up is so much less desirable because catastrophic residual risk. You shatter a large asteroid, you might create thousands of untrackable fragments. Any fragment larger than about 35 meters in diameter would still survive atmospheric entry and hit Earth with substantial force.
So you trade one big threat for thousands of smaller, still dangerous ones.
Exactly. Deflection is cleaner, more predictable, and safer.
The workhorse of non-nuclear deflection is the kinetic impactor, and this technology is now proven reality thanks to NASA.
Yes, the kinetic impactor is the most mature non-nuclear approach we have. The method is simple. You collide a massive spacecraft with the asteroid at hypervelocity.
And that directly alters the object's momentum, nudging its trajectory.
Right. We had precursors like the Deep Impact mission in 2005 that hit Comet Tempel 1, but that was mostly for science.
The true defense test was DART in 2022, the double asteroid redirection test. This wasn't just analysis.
DART was monumental. It targeted Dimorphos, the small 160-meter moon orbiting the larger asteroid Didymos. This was a perfect test case because they could precisely measure the resulting change.
The goal was to change the orbital period by at least 73 seconds.
And the results they blew that away.
By a lot.
By a lot. DART reduced Dimorphos's orbital period around Didymos by 32 minutes. Far greater deflection than predicted.
And why was it so much more effective?
It's what scientists call the momentum enhancement factor, or beta factor. The collision didn't just transfer the spacecraft's momentum. The impact also ejected a huge amount of material from Dimorphos's surface.
Like a high-speed rocket exhaust.
Exactly. That ejecta pushed the asteroid even further off course. The asteroid helped push itself.
So this validated the kinetic impactor method for threats up to about half a mile wide.
Absolutely. DART established this as the most effective, most technologically ready, and globally agreed upon non-nuclear method available for mid-sized threats, provided we have enough warning time.
Which is typically years.
Typically years, yes. And now other countries are pursuing it. China has a mission plan for 2027.
But what if we don't have years? What if we only have months, or the asteroid is just too big for a kinetic punch?
Then we get to the nuclear option, which, despite all the political baggage, remains the emergency plan.
It's the uncomfortable truth of the matter.
It is. Nuclear explosive devices are currently the only option for a viable defense if warning time is limited to a few months or years. NASA acknowledges they have to keep studying it.
And the way this works is completely counterintuitive. It's not about blowing up the object.
Not at all. The preferred method is the standoff approach. You detonate the device 20 meters or more above the asteroid's surface.
So it's not the physical blast wave doing the work?
No, the blast wave is too slow. It's the highly energetic X-rays and neutrons that instantaneously hit the surface. This high-energy radiation is absorbed by the top layer of material,
causing it to instantly vaporize.
in a process called ablation. It creates this intensely hot, high-speed plasma jet that expands away from the asteroid. And by Newton's third law,
every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
that plasma jet acts like a massive burst of rocket exhaust, imparting a nudging force on the object itself.
So just like the DART ejecta, the asteroid is pushing itself, but the energy source is a nuclear explosion.
Making it far, far more powerful. NASA analysis says nuclear standoff explosions are 10 to 100 times more effective than non-nuclear alternatives.
And this method is better for those rubble pile asteroids.
Crucially, yes. This non-contact approach prevents fracturing those loosely held objects, which a kinetic impactor might just shatter into more deadly pieces.
So 2 years warning, you can deflect a pretty big object this way. But there's an even more intense idea for the shortest possible warning time.
The surface and subsurface approach. This is the Hypervelocity Asteroid Intercept Vehicle, or HAIV, concept.
And the goal here is to maximize energy transfer.
Exactly. The HAIV would first use a kinetic impactor to carve out an initial crater. Then, a smaller nuclear device is detonated inside that crater.
So you're channeling the energy, creating a rocket nozzle out of the asteroid itself.
You've got it. The crater channels the plasma and vaporization energy, increasing the effective thrust. The models for this extreme scenario suggest a 300-meter-wide asteroid could be deflected,
With how much warning?
with only 30 days of warning time.
30 days. That's the long period comet scenario.
It's the ultimate insurance for that ultra-short warning time, and the model predicted less than 0.1% of the debris would reach Earth. So while it's politically challenging, if you only have weeks, it's the only thing on the table.
So while the nuclear option covers emergencies, most planetary defense planning is about having years or even decades of warning.
Right. And this allows us to use the slow-push indirect approaches, methods characterized by extreme precision and, well, gentle forces.
Let's start with what has to be the most elegant concept. The asteroid gravity tractor. You're using the weakest force in the universe to save the planet.
And that's the genius of it. The concept is contactless. A massive spacecraft is positioned near the asteroid, and it just hovers there using a low-thrust engine.
And that spacecraft's mass, however small, exerts a constant tiny gravitational pull on the asteroid.
A tiny pull, yeah. So the asteroid is slowly being towed off course like a massive deep space tugboat.
And over months or years, that persistent minuscule tug accumulates into a massive orbital chain.
That's it. And the key advantage here is that the force is uniform and non-contact.
Which makes it perfect for those rubble piles.
A perfect solution. It acts on the entire mass simultaneously, so it won't shatter the object. But the trade-offs are significant. It's the most expensive, has the lowest technical readiness, and requires decades of warning.
So if we need a continuous gentle push, what about just harnessing the sun itself? Focused solar energy?
This method aims to use sunlight as the propellant. You deploy very large, space-based concave mirrors to focus solar energy onto a small spot on the asteroid surface.
And that focused energy vaporizes the material.
Ablates it, yeah, creating a jet of gas and dust. And that jet provides the continuous thrust.
So beyond gravity and focused light, there are other contactless push technologies. Ion beam deflection.
Right. This parallels the gravity tractor's purpose, but uses a different force. Instead of gravity, you use a sophisticated ion thruster pointed directly at the asteroid's surface without touching it.
So it's a direct kinetic push, but at the atomic level.
Exactly. It achieves the same long-term deflection, a persistent, controlled push, but potentially with a much lighter spacecraft.
And then there's the mass driver approach, which is brilliant, using the asteroid's own material as propellant.
It is. It eliminates the need to carry massive amounts of propellant from Earth. You land automated systems, robotic miners, on the asteroid.
They scoop up the surface material
And eject it at extremely high velocities using linear accelerators. Essentially, throwing the asteroid's rocks away quickly to move the asteroid in the opposite direction.
And finally, there are methods that are almost passive, relying on just manipulating the asteroid's relationship with the sun.
These are the reflectivity methods. You can get a deflection just by altering the asteroid's surface. One proposal is to literally paint or dust the surface.
How does changing the color change the trajectory?
Two main ways. First, direct radiation pressure. If you coat the asteroid white with, say, titanium dioxide dust, it acts like a giant solar sail. The photons reflecting off the surface impart a tiny momentum push.
Okay.
Second, and more profoundly, through the Yarkovsky effect. This is a subtle but powerful form of thermal thrust. An asteroid rotates, so one side is heated by the sun and the other side cools. As the heated side rotates away, it re-emits that energy as infrared radiation.
And that delayed heat emission acts like a continuous tiny jet.
Precisely. That recoil force can significantly alter the orbit over long periods. If you paint the asteroid black, you maximize absorption, increasing the power of the Yarkovsky effect. It's incredibly subtle, but with decades of warning, it works.
We've established a robust technological toolkit from nuclear blasts to gravitational tows, but having the technology is only half the battle.
The other half is the political, legal, and diplomatic nightmare that comes with the decision to use it.
The diplomatic minefield. And it starts with the dual-use dilemma.
A concern famously articulated by Carl Sagan. He argued that any technology capable of deflecting an object away from Earth could logically be weaponized to steer a non-threatening object toward a specific point on the planet.
Turning a natural occurrence into a targeted, man-made kinetic weapon.
And his conclusion was stark. He suggested delaying development until an emergency, citing the risk that humanity posed a greater danger to itself than nature did.
But the technical analysis suggests the nuclear option might be too blunt to be a reliable, targeted weapon.
That's a crucial counterpoint. Analysis of the standoff approach shows that while a nuke can change an asteroid's velocity enough to push it out of an Earth-impacting orbit, that change comes with uncertainties, maybe plus or minus 20%.
So you can save the planet, but you can't hit a specific city.
Exactly. You can guarantee a miss, but you can't guarantee a hit.
The most unique diplomatic challenge, though, comes from those slow push methods, like the gravity tractor.
Yes. This is the diplomatic quandary of the shifting impact point. Because the gravity tractor is so slow, the predicted impact point on Earth is constantly moving across the globe as the trajectory changes.
So to achieve a successful deflection, the process of towing it means that for 6 months, the revised impact point might graze over Europe, and for the next year, it threatens China before finally shifting out into space.
That is the core of the problem. You are minimizing the total global risk, but you are effectively shifting the immediate threat from one region to another.
Which means the global community has to agree on the direction of the drag, whose security gets prioritized.
It creates a diplomatic situation where the threat isn't the asteroid, but the uncertainty over which nation will take the temporary risk for the global good. It's an unprecedented test of global cooperation.
This has been an absolutely fascinating deep dive. Let's try to synthesize the current state of planetary defense.
The key takeaway is balance, I think. We have validated kinetic capability with DART. That provides a strong, proven defense for mid-sized threats, provided we have years of warning.
But we're still reliant on theoretical and legally fraught nuclear options for the rapid, massive threats where we only have months.
Right. And the technological shift has been profound, moving from crude attempts to fragment things to subtle, targeted deflection.
And we understand the detection challenges now, especially the psychological stress of that probability paradox.
And all this planning happens while the intense global detection effort continues. Projects like CSS, NEOWISE, and the upcoming Vera C. Rubin Observatory are actively trying to chip away at that massive, undetected population of regional threats.
But that 56% gap remains the core vulnerability.
It does.
And this brings us to the final provocative thought we want to leave with you, the learner. Despite all this incredible ingenuity, DART, HAIV, the gravity tractor, the fact remains that 56% of those large regional threats, 140 meters or larger, remain undiscovered.
And we know statistically that one of these will collide with Earth every 5,000 years, unless we do something. So given that our non-nuclear deflection capabilities require years or decades of warning to work effectively, ask yourself this.
What single technological breakthrough in either detection speed or rapid non-nuclear deflection is the world most critically missing right now to fully secure our future against both the known and the undiscovered threats?
Is the solution faster telescopes?
Yeah.
Or is it a kinetic deflection system that can successfully nudge a 300-meter object in just a few weeks? Something to consider as you reflect on the ultimate project in planetary security.
That's a deep dive for the ages. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. You know the drill by now. We take a monumental life, we stack up the sources, articles, memoirs, all of it, and we try to pull out the essential story.
Right. We're looking for the struggles, the ingenuity,
And just the pure, unadulterated grit that defined their whole quest.
And today, we are diving deep into the life of a true pioneer. I mean, a figure whose ambition just redefined the limits of high-altitude exploration, Junko Tabei.
Oh, absolutely.
Her legacy is so immense, it literally reached the highest points on Earth and then just keeps going.
Beyond our atmosphere into the cosmos, it's incredible.
Mhm.
That legacy really is monumental. And the source material we've gathered, it paints such a vivid picture of a woman who just systematically defied every single expectation.
Social, physical, you name it.
She faced down actual life-threatening disaster. And then after all that, after achieving global fame, she just quietly pivoted.
To saving the very mountain environment she'd conquered. It's a spectacular story.
It is.
A story of relentless pursuit against, just overwhelming odds. When we look at Tabai's biography, it's really bookmarked by two central, colossal achievements.
Two things that forever changed the history of exploration and women in sports.
Exactly.
Okay, so the first one is the achievement everyone knows. It's the one that broke global headlines, right?
Right. In 1975, she became the first woman to reach the summit of Mount Everest.
And for most people, that would be it. That's the pinnacle of a lifelong career.
But for Tabei, it was, just one necessary, incredibly challenging stop on a much grander journey.
So what's the second colossal achievement?
That came much later. In 1992, she became the first woman to ascend the 7 summits.
The successfully scaling the highest peak on every single continent.
Every single one. That puts her in the most rarefied air of, the most dedicated explorers in history.
So our mission in this deep dive is to understand not just what she climbed, but, and this is critical, how she did it. We're digging through biographical excerpts, her early life, the severe social and financial challenges she faced,
The absolutely dramatic and dangerous Everest expedition.
and her later life as an environmentalist and a mentor. We're looking at how she pursued this incredibly expensive, totally male-dominated sport,
Against immense pressure.
armed with basically just ingenuity and sheer tenacity.
Yeah. We'll explore the financial hurdles, the cultural conflicts inside her all-female team.
The near-death experience in the avalanche.
And that profound shift she made from conqueror to conservator.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start at the very beginning, with the moments that really set her on this path.
Sounds good.
So Junko Tabei was born Junko Ishibashi in 1939, Biharu, Fukushima.
In the biographical accounts, they all emphasize her humble beginnings. She was the 5th daughter of 7 kids. Her father was a printer.
And what immediately stands out is this physical contrast. She was, ironically enough, considered a frail child.
Yeah, that detail is so important, isn't it? Being seen as frail. It just sets up this beautiful contrast with the iron will she showed later on.
So how did she get into climbing?
Her introduction was mandatory, not chosen. It was a class trip to Mount Nasu when she was just 10 years old.
And that single trip,
Mm-hmm.
that became the pivot point of her entire life.
It really did, and what she found on that mountain, it defined her whole lifelong passion. There were two specific things she loved about it.
Okay.
First, she loved the non-competitive nature of the sport. Mountaineering, at its core, it's personal. It's you against your own limits, against the scale of the mountain.
Not you against another person.
Exactly.
Which makes sense of her later desire to be remembered as just the 36th person to summit Everest.
Yeah.
Not the first woman.
Right. She was doing it for herself. And the second thing was she was just utterly captivated by the landscapes. The raw beauty she could only access through, physical effort.
That initial spark, it persisted. But the sources make it crystal clear that the journey was immediately difficult, financially.
Oh, incredibly difficult. High-altitude mountaineering is an expensive hobby. You need specialized gear, travel, training.
And her family just didn't have that kind of money.
Not at all. And that was the foundational pressure point. It's what molded her resourcefulness later on. Her financial limits meant she could only do a few local climbs during high school.
So she wasn't born into the kind of wealth that usually funded big expeditions back then.
No, she had to use her education to pave the way, so she prioritized her studies. From 58 to 62, she's at Showa Women's University.
Studying English and American literature.
Right, with the initial plan of becoming a teacher. But, the call of the mountains, it was just too powerful.
So after she graduates, she goes right back to climbing.
Immediately. And this is where the social struggle, the resistance from the community really begins.
She starts joining men's climbing clubs.
Because there were no other options for serious female mountaineers. None.
And the sources really outline this.
Yeah.
This distinct social hurdle she faced. Some men were supportive. They saw her skill. But others.
Others were deeply skeptical. They questioned her motives for being in what was so strongly considered a male-only domain.
This wasn't just about her ability, was it? The subtext was critical.
Oh, profoundly. It was critical of women who stepped outside their expected societal roles. The accounts say some men flat out refused to climb with her.
Or worse, they suggested she was just there to find a husband.
Exactly. Can you imagine how frustrating that must have been to be so serious, so dedicated, only to have your efforts reduced to a romantic pursuit?
That's the moment she realizes she can't just fit into the existing structure if she wants to climb seriously.
She has to redefine the structure itself.
By age 27, she's already a serious climber. She's conquered all the major mountains in Japan, including Mount Fuji. She also married a fellow mountaineer, Junko Tabei.
But that frustration with the way she was treated, it was boiling over.
So in 1969, in this decisive act of self-determination, she takes that frustration and channels it.
She founds the Joshi Tohan Club.
The Women's Mountaineering Club.
And this was revolutionary in Japan. At a time when women were expected to be focused on domestic life, Tabei is building this dedicated, highly ambitious club just for women.
And this wasn't some casual hiking group, was it?
Not at all. This club had a radical, almost provocative mission statement.
Captured in their slogan?
A slogan that was a direct challenge to the norms of the era. It was, let's go on an overseas expedition by ourselves.
Wow.
It just encapsulated that need for independence. They weren't asking for permission or waiting to be accepted by a male expedition.
They were defining their own goals, raising their own money, and getting it done on their own terms.
Yeah, and the sources show her tenacity in funding all this. She worked as an editor for a scientific journal.
On top of her climbing and training.
Holding down multiple jobs just to afford the gear and the travel for these dreams. That slogan is just, it's pure power.
It shows the challenge was twofold, right? They were tackling the world's most daunting physical challenges.
And fighting these deeply entrenched cultural expectations about women's roles at the exact same time.
Okay, so the Joshi Tohan Club gets founded. What happens next?
Well, they immediately lived up to their own rallying cry. Within a year, in 1970, they'd organized and embarked on their first major international expedition.
Off to Nepal.
To tackle Annapurna III.
And this wasn't some easy practice run, was it?
Not at all. Annapurna III is a technically challenging mountain, and the team was already showing Tabei's pioneering spirit. She and her partner, Hiroko Hirakawa, they summited via a new route.
A new route on the difficult south side.
That detail is so critical. They weren't just following a path, they were setting a route. And in doing that, they achieved two huge distinctions.
The first female ascent of Annapurna III.
And also the first Japanese ascent of the mountain. They immediately put the Joshi Tohan Club on the map.
As a serious force.
A very serious force in global mountaineering.
And the sources have this great little detail about the conditions, right?
Yeah, it was so brutally cold on the summit push that when they tried to take a picture, their camera's film actually cracked.
Wow,
Just
cracked.
a chilling reminder that they were operating at the absolute limit of endurance and technology.
But this success, as triumphant as it was, it exposed an unexpected weakness in the team.
A weakness that was cultural, not physical. Tabei later analyzed this and realized the women were struggling to reconcile traditional Japanese values of quiet strength with the immediate practical needs of high-altitude mountaineering.
Fascinating. So you're talking about this cultural tightrope. How did those values conflict with survival at, 24,000 feet?
Well, it was a clash between the public, stoic face and your true urgent needs. Tabei noticed that a lot of team members were initially reluctant to admit they needed help.
Or that they didn't know something.
Or that they were struggling physically. They preferred this stoic silence, feeling ashamed if they had to voice a weakness.
I can see the cultural pressure there, but on a mountain, that kind of silence can be fatal.
Absolutely fatal. If you don't immediately say you have altitude sickness or your rope is fraying,
The entire team is put at risk.
precisely. The mountain doesn't reward stoic silence. It demands immediate, clear, and often vulnerable communication.
So climbing at this extreme level forced them to confront these deep cultural norms head on.
It did. It demanded they acknowledge personal limits, communicate them without shame, and accept help from each other just to survive.
So that's the aha moment. The sport challenged not just their bodies, but their whole social structure.
Exactly. It was transformative. It taught them the necessity of interdependence in a high-stakes environment.
So success on Annapurna III wasn't just a physical feat.
No, it was a societal one. They learned how to function as a truly independent unit, relying only on each other. And that gave them the hard-won expertise and the confidence they needed for their next goal.
Which was Mount Everest.
The ultimate goal. Having pioneered a new route on a major peak, they immediately set their sights higher. In 1971, they applied for the toughest permit in the world.
The transition to Everest, though, it was anything but quick.
Not at all. The club reformed as the Japanese Women's Everest Expedition, or JWE. 15 women, led by Aiko Hisano.
And most of them were working professionals, right? Teachers, doctors.
And 2 of them, including Tabei, were mothers, which just emphasizes the societal pressure and the huge logistical challenge of balancing all these parts of their lives.
And the bureaucracy alone. Just getting the permit.
Oh, that was a test of patience. They applied in 71, but with the tight international climbing schedule, they had to wait 4 excruciating years.
Just to get a slot in 1975.
That wait was grueling, but the financial part, that was the real Everest of the organization.
Tabei took on the job of finding sponsors. And the rejection they faced was just.
Steeped in blatant social prejudice.
The accounts mentioned the responses she got. She was frequently told, in no uncertain terms, that they should be raising children instead.
Can you just imagine the frustration? Trying to organize a historic, globally significant expedition and being dismissed with that kind of archaic, solipsist retort.
It says so much about the barriers they had to overcome just to get to the base of the mountain.
It really does. They eventually got some last-minute funding from a newspaper and a TV station.
Who recognized the media potential, I'm sure.
Of course. The world's first all-female Everest attempt. But even with sponsors, the cost was crippling for the members.
And that's the critical context. Each member still had to pay 1.5 million yen out of pocket.
Which, in the early 1970s in Japan, for an educated working professional, that could be more than a full year's salary.
An astronomical personal investment.
It was.
So what did Tabei do? How did she raise her share?
She went back to basics. She taught piano lessons. This legendary mountaineer, preparing for the most dangerous journey on Earth, was tutoring local kids in music and English.
Lesson by lesson, just scraping the money together.
And this necessity, it drove a level of ingenuity that is it's one of the most compelling parts of the whole story.
Because every yen was precious.
So she had to become her own equipment designer and manufacturer.
Okay, we have to slow down on this detail. We're talking about gear that is literally life or death on Everest. Insulation, waterproofing.
And Tabei is improvising with household materials. The accounts give us specifics. She needed waterproof gloves, couldn't afford top-of-the-line ones.
So she made them from the heavy vinyl cover of her family's car.
cutting and stitching the material herself.
That's the ultimate example of necessity as the mother of invention.
Yeah, it really is. And it wasn't just gloves. She needed durable trousers. She sewed her own climbing pants out of old curtains from her house.
This isn't just budgeting. This is building her own world, physically and financially, so she could chase her passion.
So they finally begin the expedition, March 1975, using the classic Hillary Norgay route from '53, with 6 experienced Sherpa guides.
And the media attention was intense.
Oh yeah, journalists, a TV crew, everyone was there. And everything was going according to plan, that grueling, slow ascent.
Until May 4th, 1975.
That day brought catastrophic bad luck, a near-death experience that tested their collective will to its absolute limit.
They were at Camp 2, around 6,300 meters.
About 20,700 feet, yeah. They were camping when the camp was suddenly hit by a massive slab avalanche.
The sources convey the sudden violence of it all. Tabei said she felt like she was being tossed around like a rag doll.
She and 4 other climbers were completely buried under compacted snow and ice.
And she lost consciousness.
Her life was saved only because the quick-thinking Sherpa guides managed to locate and dig her out.
Miraculously, no casualties.
Thanks to the Sherpa's training, yeah. But Tabei was badly bruised, injured. She could barely walk for 2 days.
So this is the critical juncture, the ultimate test. After being buried alive, dizzy, in pain, the sensible response is to go down.
To withdraw from the expedition. She'd already survived a major disaster.
But her drive was just uncompromising.
Absolutely. The accounts confirm that as soon as she could physically put weight on her knees, she was back on the ropes, continuing the climb.
Just 2 days after her near-death experience.
That decision to continue, despite the trauma, that's what defines her tenacity.
But the drama wasn't over.
Not by a long shot. As she recovered and they pressed on, they hit another logistical problem.
Just as they were planning the final push.
The original plan was for 2 women to summit, but then a sudden bout of altitude sickness hit some of the key Sherpas.
Which meant less oxygen could be carried for the summit party.
Exactly. They had to scale back to a single summit attempt. The leader, Aiko Hisano, gathered the team, and after a lot of deliberation, she nominated Tabei to complete the climb.
So the fate of the entire 4-year, all the sacrifices, the team effort, it all rested on her shoulders.
All of it. And as she got near the peak, she faced one last unexpected horror, one that she found almost worse than the avalanche.
Worse than the avalanche? What was it?
It was a failure of transparency in the exploration community. The biographical accounts note her intense fury. Nearing the summit, she was shocked to discover this narrow, highly unstable, dangerous ridge of ice.
And it had gone completely unmentioned in all the previous expedition accounts she'd studied.
All of them, including the ones from 1953. It was a terrifying, critical danger point that other climbers had just failed to report.
That lack of warning is almost as dangerous as the obstacle itself.
It is. She described crossing it as the most tense moment she'd ever had. She couldn't walk upright. She had to crawl along this razor-thin ridge sideways.
Knowing a single slip meant certain death.
After surviving being buried alive, that act of inching along an unexpected, treacherous path, that was the moment that pushed her to the very edge.
But she made it, 12 days after the avalanche.
Crawling, bruised, but absolutely resolute. On May 16, 1975, with her Sherpa guide Aang Sering, Junko Tabei reached the summit.
The first woman to stand on the roof of the world.
And the world just exploded with recognition. It wasn't just a sporting achievement, it was a societal milestone.
The reaction was immediate, overwhelming. A parade in Kathmandu. Thousands of cheering supporters at the Tokyo airport when she got back.
Messages from the King of Nepal, the Japanese government. A TV miniseries was even made about it.
But here's where we get to the core of Tabei's philosophy, right? It links back to her initial love of mountaineering as a non-competitive thing.
Exactly. She was showered with attention, but the sources make it very clear she was fundamentally uncomfortable with the spectacle of global celebrity.
She famously rejected it. She told the media she preferred to be remembered simply as the 36th person to summit Everest.
The number 1 was irrelevant to her. She said it plainly. I did not intend to be the first woman on Everest.
Her motivation was the challenge, the experience, the view from the top.
Not the record books or the endorsements.
And that decision to reject fame and to reject corporate dependence, that really defines her next chapter, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. For almost anyone else, Everest is the end, the final chapter. For Tabei, it was just a very expensive training climb.
It set the stage for something much more ambitious. The 7 summits.
And she made a clear decision after that Everest media storm. She never accepted corporate sponsorship again.
A deliberate choice for financial independence.
Yeah, she didn't want the restrictions or the obligations that came with major funding. So she kept saving money by teaching music and English, making paid appearances, guiding tours.
She relied on friends and supporters for donations of gear and food, but maintained her own autonomy.
And that independence allowed her to methodically pursue her personal goal, the highest mountain on every continent.
Starting in 1980 with Kilimanjaro.
And then she just ticked them off. Aconcagua in 87, Denali in 88, Elbrus in 89, Vinson in Antarctica in 91.
And finally, Puncak Jaya in Oceania in 1992.
And that final ascent officially made her the first woman to complete the 7 summits, an incredible record.
But her quest didn't stop there either.
No, she saw the 7 summits as just one categorization. Her ultimate personal goal was much broader.
To climb the highest mountain in every country in the world.
And by the end of her life, she had completed at least 70 of these national high points.
That just shows a dedication that completely transcends record chasing. It was about the joy of the quest itself.
It was. But her legacy is defined by more than just climbing. In her later life, she dedicated herself to something critical that many mountaineers overlook.
The environmental degradation of the mountains she loved.
This is such a powerful and necessary shift. Tabei had seen firsthand how the commercialization of Everest,
Spurred in part by her own historic climb.
had accelerated the environmental damage at high altitude.
So to address this scientifically, in 2000, she goes back to university.
She completes postgraduate studies at Kyushu University, specifically researching the environmental problems caused by climbing groups, focusing on the waste left behind on Everest.
And what did her research find?
It looked into the shocking amount of non-biodegradable waste. Abandoned oxygen cylinders, old ropes, tents, and critically human waste left exposed where decomposition is impossible.
And that's not just an eyesore, right? It's a health risk.
A serious health risk. It contaminates water sources as the ice melts, affecting Sherpas and future climbers.
It's the ultimate ethical turn for an explorer, realizing that the act of conquering can destroy what you love.
And she translated this research into fierce activism. She became the director of the Himalayan Adventure Trust of Japan, working globally to preserve mountain environments.
And this wasn't just fundraising or policy work.
No, this was hands-on, practical engineering solutions, which links right back to her self-made gear for Everest.
The incinerator.
She spearheaded the design and installation of a specialized incinerator near Everest Base Camp, designed specifically to burn climbers' trash safely.
And she led by example. She organized cleanup climbs.
Many of them, yeah. In Japan and the Himalayas, often with her husband and her children, dedicating her fame and resources to giving back to the mountains that defined her life.
She continued to get honors, of course.
Yeah.
In 2003, for the 50th anniversary celebration of the first Everest summit, she and Sir Edmund Hillary,
The 2 pivotal figures in Everest history,
were given a special place in the festivities. That puts her in genuinely legendary company.
She was also a prolific author, 7 books between 96 and 2008, but her commitment also extended to her local community.
After the huge 2011 Great East Japan earthquake, which hit her home region of Fukushima hard,
She shifted her focus. She started organizing annual guided trips up Mount Fuji, specifically for school children who'd been affected by the disaster.
using the mountain not as a challenge, but as a therapeutic resource.
Exactly. A way to heal and inspire a new generation, teaching them resilience through the simple act of putting one foot in front of the other.
Even when her own health was failing, her spirit was just unbroken.
She was diagnosed with stomach cancer in 2012, but she refused to let it stop her climbing.
The sources mention her final act of leadership.
Despite her advancing illness, in July 2016, just a few months before she died, she led a youth expedition up Mount Fuji. She passed away in October 2016 at age 77.
And her impact has been permanently marked in our solar system. An asteroid, 16897, was named Tabei after her.
And then in 2019, a major mountain range on Pluto was formally named Tabei Montes in her honor.
The ultimate posthumous recognition for an explorer.
It really is, and her story continues to inspire. In 2025, for the 50th anniversary of her Everest climb, a new film, Climbing for Life, is scheduled to open the Tokyo International Film Festival.
So her legacy is continually being rediscovered.
What an immense journey we've covered, from the child told she was too frail to the woman who financed her dream with piano lessons and sewed her survival gear from car covers.
She survived an avalanche that buried her alive. She rejected the easy path of corporate celebrity.
And she dedicated her post-record life to actively cleaning up the world she had successfully conquered.
Tabei's life really does expand the definition of what exploration is. It wasn't just about the summit. It was about achieving independence, challenging cultural norms.
And ultimately accepting environmental responsibility for the pristine world she loved.
She proved, conclusively, that mountaineering was not solely the domain of wealthy male explorers.
Her dedication to the 7 summits and the 70 highest national peaks just solidifies her legacy as one of the most profound explorers of the 20th century.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Tabei's personal quest is, I think, a powerful metaphor for perseverance against daunting odds.
Whether they're financial, societal, or an actual physical disaster. Her story teaches us that preparation and skill are crucial, but often survival depends on that unwavering will and the willingness to improvise.
The most enduring takeaway from her journey isn't the number of records, is it?
No, it's the spirit in which she broke them. Her strength wasn't blind stoicism. It was the ability to adapt, improvise, accept help, and crucially, to keep moving forward even after disaster.
She refused to let the societal narrative that she should be home raising children define her limits.
She defined her own quest right down to the gear she sewed herself.
And that's the final thought we want to leave you with, straight from the source. On the 80th anniversary of her birth, her famous motivation slogan was shared with the world. It's a simple, powerful command.
Do not give up. Keep on your quest.
Apply that perseverance, that ingenuity, and that relentless spirit to your own challenge, whatever mountain you might be facing.
The financing might be scarce, the social pressure might be high, and you might even hit some unexpected ice ridges. But the quest is profoundly yours to complete.
A truly inspiring life. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
Until next time. Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
So today we are going for a big one.
A huge one, maybe the biggest. And our mission, as always, is to take these intimidating, towering works that you hear about and just pull out the most fascinating, most crucial bits of knowledge.
So you walk away knowing what it's all about, and hopefully you're hooked.
And today we're tackling the literary white whale itself.
Herman Melville's 1851 epic, Moby Dick, or The Whale. And this book is, well, it's just a study in contradictions.
It really is the ultimate paradox. I mean, we all know this book as the great American novel.
Right.
It's celebrated by giants. You have William Faulkner saying he wished he'd written it. D.H. Lawrence called it one of the strangest and most wonderful books in the world.
It feels foundational, and yet, and this is the part that's just stunning, when Melville died in 1891, the book was a complete commercial failure.
A total failure.
It was out of print,
Yeah.
forgotten. It took this massive revival in the 20th century to even give it the reputation it has today.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack this thing. We're going to look at its dark, real-world origins, how Melville built this incredibly innovative and complex structure.
And of course, the plot itself, Captain Ahab's maniacal quest, and really get into why 19th century readers just didn't get it.
They just missed what we now see as a masterpiece.
At its core, the story is pretty simple. On the surface, at least. It's told by a sailor, Ishmael, about his journey on this whaler called the Pequod.
And the ship's commander, Captain Ahab, has his soul completely consumed by one single thing.
Vengeance. Pure vengeance against a giant white sperm whale, Moby Dick, who took his leg in an earlier fight.
So it's this story of obsession, of revenge, but it's layered on top of what is basically a meticulous, almost scientific manual of 19th century whaling.
Exactly.
So let's start there with section 1, the factual genesis of this fictional whale, because Moby Dick is not, pure fantasy.
Not at all. It is absolutely grounded in Herman Melville's own grueling real-life experience.
And this is so important to stress. Melville wasn't some, armchair writer just dabbling in sea stories.
No, he was a common sailor from 1841 to 1844. He spent time on actual whalers, the most famous one being the Acushnet. This wasn't research for him. This was his life.
He was living it, the hierarchy, the danger, the incredibly exhausting work that defined that whole industry.
And he didn't just borrow the setting, he basically borrowed the people. The crew of the Pequod is populated with thinly veiled versions of sailors he actually knew.
Like the Black Cook Fleece?
Yeah, Fleece was almost certainly based on a man named William Maiden, a cook Melville sailed with. I mean, the sources show there were 3 black men on the Acushnet's crew, which reflected the reality of whaling at the time. It was a diverse world.
And it wasn't just him. The first mate, Starbuck, there was a real first mate named Edward C. Starbuck.
Right, and the tragic character Pip, the young African-American cabin boy, he was based on a man named John Backus, who joined the crew mid-voyage.
There's even an amazing anecdote of one of his crewmates, Henry Hubbard, who went through his copy of Moby Dick with a pen.
And annotated it. He basically confirmed who was who, saying that the second mate, Stubb, was based on a guy named John Hall. This grounding in reality is what makes all those technical chapters feel so authentic.
Okay, let's get to the star of the show. Moby Dick himself, he wasn't entirely made up either, was he?
Not at all. He was modeled on this legendary, almost mythical albino sperm whale called Mocha Dick.
Mocha Dick.
He was a notorious creature, a huge bull sperm whale known for being white and for being incredibly aggressive. He hunted in the waters off the island of Mocha, near Chile.
And the key thing, the legend around him, was that he supposedly had something like 20 harpoons already stuck in his back from previous fights.
Exactly. So he wasn't just some big animal. He was a known killer, a survivor, a force of nature that had beaten men before.
And what really cemented this character for Melville was an article he read, right?
Yeah, an 1839 article by an explorer, J.N. Reynolds, called Mocha Dick, or the White Whale of the Pacific. And this article described the whale as attacking ships with what it called premeditated ferocity.
Premeditated ferocity, that's the key phrase.
That's everything. Because it takes the whale from being just a dangerous animal and turns it into an intelligent, almost malicious villain, an antagonist.
So that article gave Melville two huge things.
Right. First, the first-person narrator style that he gives to Ishmael, and second, the ideological template for Ahab's worldview. The idea that this whale isn't just acting on instinct, it chooses to be evil.
Reynolds even quoted a captain who spotted the whale and said, Mocha Dick, or the DL, this boat never shears off from anything that wears the shape of a whale.
And that's Ahab. That's his whole psychology right there. Defiant, confrontational, almost suicidal.
So if Mocha Dick gave him the villain, the book's ending, that whole devastating sinking of the Pequod, that came from a real event too.
Oh yeah. The most famous maritime disaster of its time. The sinking of the whale ship Essex back in 1820.
The details are just terrifying. The Essex gets rammed by a massive sperm whale 2,000 miles from land. The crew is forced into these tiny open boats.
And get this, Melville actually met the son of the Essex's first mate, Owen Chase. And the son loaned him his father's detailed account from 1821, the narrative, the most extraordinary and distressing shipwreck of the whale ship Essex.
So you have to imagine the scene. Melville's at sea, on a whaler, maybe even near where the Essex went down decades before.
And he's reading this detailed first-hand account of a whale deliberately hunting and destroying a ship. The source material says reading it had a surprising effect on him.
I'll bet it did. That's not just a cool historical fact. That's a visceral blueprint for the climax of your novel. It proves that the catastrophic ending he was planning was actually plausible.
And he kept that book his whole life, filled with his own notes. It was the ultimate proof of the whale's terrifying power.
The writing process itself was also shaped by a couple of major forces. First, he thought it would be a much quicker book.
Right, but it ended up taking 18 months. And the biggest reason for that was probably his meeting with Nathaniel Hawthorne in August 1850.
This is a legendary literary friendship. Melville was already working on the book, but he was just blown away by Hawthorne's genius, especially after reading his collection, Mosses from an Old Man's.
He compared it to Shakespeare.
And that interaction, that philosophical dialogue with Hawthorne, inspired Melville to completely revise and deepen his own story.
Absolutely. What might have started as a more straightforward whaling adventure transformed into something weirder, denser, what scholars call cosmic and encyclopedic. It's what allowed Ahab to become more than just a vengeful captain. He becomes this figure of tragic, philosophic defiance.
And the proof is right there in the book. The dedication is to Hawthorne, in token of my admiration for his genius. It really confirms that Hawthorne was this catalytic agent that pushed Melville into a whole new level of ambition.
But we also can't forget the sheer technical work Melville put in. It wasn't just his own experience or these big dramatic stories.
He did his homework.
Meticulous cetological research. He was determined, as he put it, to give the truth of the thing.
He drew from 5 major whaling books, but the most important one was Thomas Beale's Natural History of the Sperm Whale.
And he didn't just, crib facts from it. He used Beale's book to structure all those long, technical whale chapters that can sometimes trip readers up. It gave him a logical, almost scientific framework for his own philosophical wanderings.
So you have this perfect storm of ingredients.
You've got authentic sailor experience, a mythic white whale, the real-life horror of the Essex, the philosophical depth from Hawthorne, and this deep scientific research. All that gets mixed together and, well, you get the quest.
Which brings us to section 2, the maniacal quest. So the story kicks off with our narrator, Ishmael, heading to New Bedford, Massachusetts, and you know right away this isn't going to be a normal adventure story.
Not at all, because of who he meets. Ishmael, sort of this everyman looking for knowledge, almost immediately forms this deep bond with Queequeg.
A tattooed Polynesian cannibal harpooner.
Right, from the fictional island of Rokovoko. And this relationship just immediately shatters reader expectations for the time.
Ishmael's terrified at first, but he has this profound realization. Better sleep with a sober cannibal than a drunken Christian.
And that line establishes a key theme right from the jump. That true humanity and spirituality might not be where you expect them. It's a direct challenge to the racial and religious prejudices of the era.
Before they ship out, they go to the Whaleman's Chapel and hear Father Mapple's sermon on Jonah.
Which is such a deliberate choice by Melville. The sermon sets the entire spiritual stage. It's all about human defiance, divine command, obedience. And it perfectly foreshadows the tragic defiance of Captain Ahab.
So they board the Pequod, which is owned by these Quaker ship owners, Bildad and Peleg. And the crew is intentionally this microcosm of the 19th century world.
It's an incredible mix. You have Starbuck, the chief mate, who's a rational Nantucket Quaker. Then the harpooneers, Queequeg the Polynesian, Tashtego, a pure-blooded Native American, and Dagu, a huge, powerful African man.
All these races, all these backgrounds, all brought together for the purpose of whaling.
Until Ahab shows up.
And when Captain Ahab finally appears, he reveals his true mission. It's not about profit, it's not about whale oil, it's about revenge.
Pure metaphysical rage against Moby Dick, the whale that took his leg. And he has to get this very diverse, very practical crew on board with his personal vendetta.
How does he do it? With a gold coin.
A Spanish doubloon. He nails it to the mast and offers it to the first man who spots the white whale. And this is where Melville uses a single object to just unpack a universe of philosophical ideas.
Let's pause on that because the way everyone interpreted that coin is so key to the whole book's theme of perception. The coin has 3 mountain peaks on it, one with a flame, one with a tower, and one with a rooster.
And every single man sees his own reality reflected in it. Ahab looks at it and sees symbols of his own power, his own firmness, his eventual victory. He's projecting his obsession onto the gold.
But then you have Starbuck, the pragmatic Quaker.
He sees the Holy Trinity, a symbol of divine order.
And Stubb, the sort of jovial second mate, just sees the zodiac. It's all just fate and chance to him.
And then there's Flask, the third mate, who sees nothing. It's just money. The complete opposite of Ahab's symbolic reading.
It's a brilliant moment. Melville is showing you that there is no single objective truth. The coin is just a coin. Perception is everything.
Speaking of hidden realities, Ahab has a secret weapon. A secret crew he smuggled on board, led by this mysterious figure, Fedallah.
A Parsi harpooner who's basically Ahab's dark shadow.
And Fedallah delivers this crucial, very strange prophecy. He lays out these 4 seemingly impossible conditions for Ahab's death.
Okay, what are they?
First, Ahab will have neither a hearse nor a coffin. Second, before he dies, he must see 2 hearses. One not made by mortal hands, and another made of American wood.
Weird.
Third, Fedallah himself has to die before Ahab. And finally, the prophecy says that only hemp can kill Ahab.
These sound like riddles from a Shakespeare play. They set up this sense of inescapable doom.
And they provide the structure for the whole final tragedy. The rising tension of that quest is built around these 9 meetings, or GAMs, with other ships.
And Ishmael explains that a GAM is a social meeting at sea. It's the custom. You stop, you exchange news, mail, supplies.
But Ahab, because he's so obsessed, just rushes through these meetings. He violates the social contract of the sea. And each ship they meet is a bit more damaged, a bit more desperate, foreshadowing what's going to happen to the Pequod.
Like the Jeroboam, which lost its chief mate to Moby Dick.
But the most powerful encounter for me is with the Rachel. Her captain is desperately searching for his lost crew, which includes his own young son.
And he begs Ahab for help, and Ahab just refuses. Coldly.
It's the ultimate moral failure. He puts his personal vengeance above the duty to save human life. That's the moment he becomes completely lost to his own obsession.
And the counterpoint to that is Captain Boomer on the Samuel Enderby.
Right. Boomer also lost a limb to Moby Dick and arm. But crucially, he holds no ill will. He moves on. His ship surgeon even says the whale wasn't malicious, just clumsy.
Boomer's acceptance is this stark, damning contrast to Ahab's all-consuming hatred.
As the quest goes on, the psychological pressure just mounts and mounts, and the darkest example is what happens to Pip.
The young African-American cabin boy. In a moment of sheer panic, he jumps out of a whaleboat.
And he's left behind, alone in the middle of the vast ocean. When they find him, he's rescued physically, but his mind is just shattered.
And Melville links this directly to the theme of race and commodification. He says Pip, as a former slave, was reminded that he was worth less money than a whale.
He becomes the ship's conscience, but it's a broken, fragmented conscience.
Later on, there's this beautifully ironic moment. A sailor falls overboard, the life buoy sinks, and Queequeg, who just recovered from a fever, has an idea.
He had a coffin built for himself when he thought he was dying.
Yeah.
He suggests they use his coffin as the new life buoy.
Starbuck, always the pragmatist, seals it up and waterproofs it. So this object of death becomes an instrument of salvation, just waiting for the final act.
And Ahab's final descent is a total rejection of reason. He smashes his quadrant, the tool for navigation, because it only tells him where he is, not where he's going to be.
He's done with reality. He only cares about destiny now.
He even makes a new compass out of a lance. He completely rejects Starbuck's final plea to just turn back, to go home to their families.
Which brings us to the 3-day chase. On the first 2 days, Moby Dick just systematically wrecks Ahab's boats. Ahab even loses his ivory leg.
Then comes day 3, the day the prophecies are fulfilled. First, they see Fadala's corpse lashed to the whale's back, tangled in the harpoon lines.
The hearse not made by human hands. The living whale itself.
Then Moby Dick turns and smashes into the Pequod, and Ahab realizes the ship, built in Massachusetts, is the second hearse, the one made of American wood.
It's all coming true.
In his final desperate moment, Ahab throws one last harpoon, but the line whips around his neck, snags him, and yanks him out of the boat, dragged down by the whale.
Only hemp can kill him. The hemp rope of his own harpoon line.
He's literally killed by his own weapon of vengeance. The ship goes down, the whole crew is lost, except for one.
Ishmael, who survives by floating on that coffin.
On Queequeg's coffin, the object of death turned into an object of life. And who rescues him? The Rachel, the ship that was still searching for its lost children. Redemption through connection, not solitary revenge.
So that's the plot. But
Yeah.
the reason this book completely baffled 19th century readers, I think, is the stuff we're getting into now. The revolutionary structure, the dense style.
Right, this is section 3. Beyond the plot, Moby Dick is called an encyclopedic novel for a very good reason.
Its whole architecture is just wildly experimental. Scholars call it an idiosyncratic variant of the bipolar observer-hero narrative.
Which is a mouthful, but let's break that down for you. You have two poles. On one side, you have Ahab. He's the hero, the engine. He provides linearity, violence, and a single-minded focus that drives the tragic plot forward.
He's the action.
He is the action. And on the other pole, you have Ishmael, the observer. He provides digression, meditation, philosophy. He's the lens we're using to try and make sense of all this chaos.
So Ishmael's job isn't just to tell the story. It's what's called an epistemological quest.
Which just means a quest for knowledge, a quest to understand how we know what we know. He is literally trying to understand what to make of both whale and hunt. Why is this thing so impossible to grasp?
And that's why the book feels so strange to read sometimes. The narrative voice is constantly shifting. You get sermons, then stage directions, then travel writing, epic poetry, soliloquies.
And these incredibly detailed technical documents. It's like a play, then a lecture, then a ship's log. Ishmael even uses footnotes, like a scholar.
Let's talk about those chapters, the cetological documentation. They make up about a fifth of the book, and a lot of readers just try to skip them.
Which is a huge mistake, because they are absolutely vital, and they are structured to deliberately fail.
What do you mean fail?
Their purpose isn't really to teach you about whales. It's to demonstrate the impossibility of ever truly knowing or classifying the whale. The more information Ishmael gives you, the more mysterious the whale becomes.
And the most famous example of this is when the crew gets the heads of 2 different species of whale on either side of the ship.
Exactly. And Melville uses these 2 heads to represent 2 different ways of seeing reality. The right whale head is seen as Lockean.
Okay, what does that mean?
John Locke was an empiricist. He believed that all knowledge comes from observable experience and sensation. What you can see and measure is what's real. The right whale head represents that, just the facts.
And the sperm whale head.
That's seen as Kantian and Platonic.
Yeah.
Immanuel Kant argued there's an ultimate reality, the noumenal world, that exists beyond our senses, beyond our ability to perceive it.
An ideal, ungraspable form.
Precisely. So the sperm whale's head, especially that vast blank forehead of Moby Dick, represents that Kantian idea, that
Yeah.
ultimate reality is unknowable no matter how much you dissect it.
So the point of all those dense scientific chapters is to show that Ishmael's Lockean empirical attempt to document and understand the whale will always fail when it comes up against the transcendental, ungraspable Kantian reality of Moby Dick.
The more he documents, the clearer it becomes that human knowledge has limits. And the language of the book reflects this ambition.
It's dense. Scholars call it nautical, biblical, Homeric, Shakespearean.
Unceasingly elusive. Melville was literally coining words, stretching grammar, because the English language as it was just wasn't enough for what he was trying to say.
You see it in these weird constructions like plural verbal nouns, allurings, lewardings.
Or participatory adjectives like omnitooled. This
Mm.
isn't just showing off. He's trying to fuse action and condition, movement and stasis into the language itself to reflect the chaos of the world he's describing.
But the number one stylistic influence is Shakespeare.
Oh, without a doubt. F.O. Mathieson said that Melville's possession by Shakespeare went far beyond all other influences. It's what turned his writing from just reporting into this expression of profound natural forces.
He's consciously modeling Ahab on tragic heroes like King Lear or Macbeth. He took this idea from the poet Coleridge that a great tragic hero is created when a moral faculty goes into morbid excess.
Melville himself wrote that all mortal greatness is but disease. He saw tragedy in that kind of morbid obsession.
And Shakespeare taught him how to write, how to use dynamic verbs, how to structure dialogue. Ahab's famous monologue on the quarterdeck when he nails the doubloon to the mast.
It's basically blank verse. It reads like a stage play inside a novel.
All of this style serves the book's deep themes. And the main one, coming from that Kantian problem, is just the difficulty of knowing what's really real.
And Ahab's most famous line sums it all up. All visible objects, man, are but pasteboard masks. He is determined to strike through the mask.
He believes Moby Dick isn't just an animal. It's a disguise for some deliberate metaphysical evil. The whale is the physical barrier between him and ultimate truth.
But the novel constantly challenges Ahab's belief that there even is a single truth behind the mask. The doubloon scene already proved that perception is everything. Ahab sees a symbol of his own making, not some objective external evil.
A lot of people also read Moby Dick as a critique of transcendentalism.
Especially of Ralph Waldo Emerson's philosophy of radical self-reliance.
And Melville is showing us what happens when you push that idea to its absolute destructive limit.
Precisely. Ahab's extreme self-reliance becomes what scholars call solipsism, the belief that your own reality is the only one that matters. And that becomes anarchic, irresponsible, and destructive.
It's a warning against that kind of exaggerated self-regard rather than a celebration of it like Emerson's work.
We mentioned Pip earlier, but it's worth returning to the themes of race and humanity. Because while you have that early harmony between Ishmael and Queequeg, Pip's story is so much darker.
His mental breakdown is a direct result of being valued based on his price. He was literally worth less than a whale. His madness isn't just drama. It's a commentary on the dehumanization of slavery and the commodity culture of the 19th century.
He's the ship's shattered, unheeded conscience.
And finally, there's this fascinating chapter on the legal concept of fast fish and loose fish.
It is intellectually brilliant. Legally, it's about who owns a whale. A fast fish is one that's attached to a ship by a line, so it's owned. A loose fish is unattached, so it belongs to whoever finds it.
But Ishmael takes this simple legal idea and applies it to everything.
To everything. To domination, slavery, military conquest. He argues that powerful people and powerful nations are always trying to define others as fast fish bound to them by law or debt or force in order to justify owning them.
So loose fish becomes a metaphor for freedom, independence.
But it's ambiguous. Is Moby Dick a loose fish, truly free? Or is Ahab trying to make him a fast fish to satisfy his own need to possess and control his destiny? The whole chapter is this deep interrogation of who has the right to own whom. But the single most damaging thing they did, the mistake that absolutely guaranteed the book would fail, was omitting the epilogue.
They just left it out, the part that explains how Ishmael survived.
It was probably lost by the printer, but the result was devastating. You have a book written in the first person where the narrator seems to die with everyone else at the end. It's a massive, glaring, logical flaw.
And that flaw completely poisoned the reception. The British reviewers were mostly positive about the writing, but they were understandably confused. They all asked the obvious question, if everyone died, who's telling the story?
And that confusion just spread across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
The American reviewers were much more hostile, and many of them didn't even seem to read the book critically. They just echoed the negative UK reviews. They called it a crazy sort of affair.
It's so ironic. The very first American review just quoted a negative London review, completely unaware that the criticism was based on a broken version of the text.
Even his friends were mixed. One critic praised the whaling parts, but condemned what he called the moralizing, feeling Melville had violated the most sacred associations of life. They wanted another fun sea romance, not this monster.
Hawthorne tried to defend it. He wrote a letter to that critic saying, "What a book Melville has written. It gives me an idea of much greater power than his preceding ones."
But it was too late. The book was a commercial disaster. Melville made about $550 from the American sales, less than any of his 5 previous novels.
And it just faded away. It sold maybe 27 copies a year for decades and was totally out of print when he died.
Which makes its resurrection in the 20th century all the more incredible. The book was basically forgotten until the centennial of Melville's birth in 1919.
And suddenly people like Carl Van Dorn and D.H. Lawrence started championing it, recognizing its genius.
Lawrence especially. His praise forced the literary world to go back and take a second look at what they'd missed for 70 years.
And its reputation just exploded. You get these beautiful illustrated editions like the one by Rockwell Kent in 1930. The novel becomes a cultural icon. That image of the angry, embittered American slaying a mythic beast finally connected with the popular imagination.
And then come the adaptations. The silent film in 1926, the famous John Huston movie in 1956 with a screenplay by
Ray Bradbury, of all people.
Its legacy just continues to echo. Ralph Ellison's incredible 1952 novel, Invisible Man, has a prologue that is a direct tribute to Melville.
Ellison's narrator is trying to find meaning in a chaotic world, dealing with race and perception. It's a direct conversation with Moby Dick.
And it continues today. In 2017, Bob Dylan, in his Nobel Prize speech, cited Moby Dick as one of the 3 books that influenced him most. He said its themes would work its way into more than a few of my songs.
That's the ultimate triumph, isn't it? From being mutilated, ignored, and out of print to becoming this essential touchstone for artists across every generation and genre.
So we've journeyed all the way from the real-life Mocha Dick and the tragedy of the Essex, through Melville's absolutely brilliant genre-bending style, his use of Shakespeare.
And we've explored these dark themes of vengeance, perception, and what happens when self-reliance goes too far, all culminating in this incredible, posthumous rise to greatness.
And the thread that ties all of it together, the ambition, the vengeance, the critique of power, is that idea of fast fish and loose fish. That interrogation of ownership and destiny.
If Ishmael's whole quest was to try and understand what to make of the whale and the hunt, it really forces us to ask the same questions today.
It does.
If Ahab saw reality as a series of pasteboard masks that he had to strike through to get at some ultimate truth, you have to ask yourself, what are the masks we're trying to strike through now? Political narratives, social constructs, all the information filters we live inside.
And what's the price?
Exactly. What's the price? What's the destructive, self-annihilating ego, the solipsism that we're willing to risk to achieve that singular, often solitary perception of the truth? That, I think, is the deep, dark power of Moby Dick.